and look at The Bear,
Okay.
which is perhaps Galway Kinnell's most famous single poem, notorious among students. So, as you know from reading the selections of the Book of Nightmares that I've asked you to read, the bear is a kind of alter ego for Kinnell. This, he says in his book of excerpts from interviews with him, which is called Walking Down the Stairs. He says that he thought that poetry should engage with myth or should create myth or should have mythic dimension. And this is an example of a kind of mythic dimension in his poetry. Once he was here giving a reading, and Peter asked him if, what did you ask him, honey?
All right, I was very impressed by the poem. I think it's a powerful poem. So I asked what people this method of hunting bear came from. And he was polite, but he seemed to be really annoyed.
Yeah.
And I realized he'd been asked that question many times. And in a way, it was a tribute to his poem, but in a way, it was an attempt to confirm it in fact. That is, who does this with a bear? And the answer seems to be nobody. There may be Inuit peoples that do that kind of thing with a seal, with a bone wrapped in fish. I'm not sure. I think it has been used as a method of hunting, but I can't imagine that it would work the way the poem has it work in bear hunting. So I felt really bad because I like him and I like his poetry, but at the same time, I felt that there was a weakness there that I'd accidentally uncovered.
Yeah. So
So
anyway,
you think the weakness was because he
Because
felt that he didn't have any substance to back up the poem with? I mean, it
no,
wasn't.
no, the poem
What was
has
it?
substance. I think the
No, I
weakness.
mean the background, the information that he's referring to.
No, I think he made it up. And I don't mind that he made it up.
Right.
But I mean, it seems to me that you often raise this kind of objection to a poem in terms of objective fact. If you can't really hunt a bear by putting a bone in some meat and having the bear swallow the sharpened bone and follow the bear by eating its blood and feces, then that the poem in a way doesn't fit with the natural world that we actually live in. That's what I think the weakness is, but I still think it's a good
I
poem.
do too. So
Sure.
let's take it as a kind of mythic narrative. And notice again, writing in sections, Cannell loves sections. He's kind of a numerologically mystical person, so he writes in a lot of these short, intense sections. The bear. One, in late winter, I sometimes glimpse bits of steam coming up from some fault in the old snow and bend down close and see it is lung colored and put down my nose and know the chilly, enduring odor of bear. Two, I take a wolf's rib and whittle it sharp at both ends and coil it up and freeze it in blubber and place it out on the fairway of the bears. And when it has vanished, I move out on the bear tracks, roaming in circles until I come to the first tentative, dark splash on the earth. And I set out running, following the splashes of blood wandering over the world. At the cut, gashed resting places, I stop and rest. At the crawl marks where he lay out on his belly to overpass some stretch of botchy ice, I lie out, dragging myself forward with bear knives in my fists. Three. On the third day, I begin to starve. At nightfall, I bend down, as I knew I would, at a turd sopped in blood, and hesitate, and pick it up, and thrust it in my mouth, and gnash it down, and rise, and go on running. For on the seventh day, living by now on bare blood alone, I can see his upturned carcass far out ahead, a scraggled, steamy bulk, the heavy fur riffling in the wind. I come up to him and stare at the narrow spaced, petty eyes the dismayed face laid back on the shoulder, the nostrils flared, catching perhaps the first taint of me as he died. I hack a ravine in his thigh and eat and drink and tear him down his whole length and open him and climb in and close him up after me against the wind and sleep. 5. And dream of lumbering flat-footed over the tundra, stabbed twice from within, splattering a trail behind me, splattering it out no matter which way I lurch, no matter which parabola of bare transcendence, which dance of solitude I attempt, which gravity-clutched leap, which trudge, which groan. 6. Until one day I totter and fall on this stomach that has tried so hard to keep up, to digest the blood as it leaked in, to break up and digest the bone itself. And now the breeze blows over me, blows off the hideous belches of ill digested bear blood and rotted stomach and the ordinary wretched odor of bear. Blows across my sore, lolled tongue a song or screech until I think I must rise up and dance. And I lie still. 7. I awaken, I think. Marsh lights reappear. Geese come trailing again up the flyway. In her ravine under old snow, the dam bear lies licking lumps of smeared fur and drizzly eyes into shapes with her tongue. And one hairy-souled trudge stuck out before me. The next groaned out. The next, the next. The rest of my days I spend wandering, wondering what, anyway, was that sticky infusion, that rank flavor of blood, that poetry by which I lived. So it's quite a magical poem, and it's a poem about magical transformation. It's a poem about becoming a bear, and it's a poem about becoming a poet, right? Notice this interesting bit of lore when he mentions the dam bear licking the lumps of flesh into shapes. Apparently, people used to believe that little baby bear cubs were born as little blobs, little tiny blobs, and their moms had to lick them into bear shape, which I think is just absolutely wonderful. So, there at the end of the poem are the babies, just as the Book of Nightmares begins and ends with babies being born, you know. But in general, okay, so it's a narrative, it's a trek, it's a journey, it's a hunting ritual. Yeah, Douglas?
Yeah, at least around here, the bear cubs are born um, in the middle of the winter,
Yeah,
and they creep up to their mother's teats and latch on,
yeah,
but they're pretty much unformed.
yeah,
When they're born, I mean they're formed, but they don't look like a bear cub.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I could see how people would think that.
I know, isn't that wonderful? It's like just hang out with your mom for a few months and she's licking you and like, okay, I'm gonna lick some legs into being and a little head, you know. I just think it's the most wonderful thing, you know. And then
Another thing is the when uh, it's like it sounds pretty gross about the him eating the bear turds, but when I lived in New Hampshire and I had a orchard in our front yard, bears would come and eat the drops, and they'd eat them in huge quantities, and then they'd shit them out, like probably less than half digested. So
yeah,
there'd be these huge piles of partly digested apples.
yeah,
And I could definitely see how, if you were starving, you could live for a while on bear turds.
yeah, I know. That's the thing that gets students and gets audiences though. But notice, I mean, Galway Kinnell is a dark poet. He's a poet of the body, he's a poet of the earth, and he's a poet of death and of, you know, these rituals of survival. Um, that's one of the great strengths of his poetry, I think, is that he's willing to go down into these dark places and, you know, enact there these rituals of wandering and descent, which are so important to him, so important to his imagination. So in that, he's different from kind of a lot of other poets. It's just one of the things for which he's known. So notice the patterning, the numerological mysticism of the number seven, which he uses so often. Like the Book of Nightmares is 10 books, each made of seven sections. And that's a numerologically complete number, you know? And he just uses it a lot. It enables him to write poetry sort of at a maximum intensity, it seems to me, because he's not trying to just establish a long, continuous narrative with all the connecting, pits and valleys. But he can just move
I'm a
from
little bit worried if Stephanie, she's been in the bathroom a long time.
who? What did you say?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I was still muted.
Go ahead, whoever
I,
wants
I
to
did
talk.
want to say something about
Go
that
ahead.
was me. Leslie. So it seems to me when I read this poem, at first I was just sort of
Actually, we can't understand what you're saying.
then I'm okay. Sorry. Yeah,
Try again.
I am. All right.
Yeah.
Second.
Leslie?
Something's going on.
Okay. Yes, shoot. Okay, Leslie, wherever you are when you're ready to talk, just come back in, okay? So other people, comments?
With the numbers, that's actually a very old thing to do with the more ambitious kind of lyric poetry. It's done, I think, in the 16th and 17th centuries. Dryden certainly does it. And Yeats does it a lot. And
Yeah.
you said Yeats was one of the two biggest poetic influences on Galway Kinnell. It's relatively rare with free verse poets, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
I was slightly a little bit relieved to find out from Peter that this isn't people really don't do this. um, it no, it's very very powerful, very visceral. I mean, his poetry smells and hair and this kind of earthy, visceral thing really is seems to recur in a lot of his poetry. This is a very, I mean, this is a disturbing but very powerful poem.
Yeah, and it's a poem of birth and death. At one point, Emily Dickinson, when her little nephew died, she wrote in a letter, "Love and death, is there anything else?" And Galway Kinnell is very, very much a poet of love and death. This poem is not so much about love, but definitely the Book of Nightmares is. But he's interested in, or let's just say obsessed by, especially in the whole first decades of his poetry, exploring death, exploring what it means to be mortal, what it is to, bear this consciousness that we're going to die. And also in these ritual transformations, what the surprising word in this poem, it seems to me, is poetry, you
Mhm.
know, this poetry by which I lived. There,
Yeah,
okay,
about
let's
that.
try
It's
again.
also that he has that's the last line, which is the longest line in the poem. And
Uh-huh.
he could have broken that into two lines and it would have looked like the rest of the poem, but he didn't.
Yeah, because it's all one thing.
Yeah.
Leslie, are you going to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sort of.
You're breaking
Let me
up. Is
try.
there a way you could get a better connection,
Okay.
Leslie, or get closer to the
Can you hear me now?
modem?
Around it.
Not really.
No.
It's a
Let's,
connection issue.
yeah, I'm so sorry. It's maybe not going to work.
Okay, well, I've got two or three things. One is that,
Actually, Tony, take us out of
sorry.
screen sharing for a minute. Take us away from screen sharing so that everybody
Oh,
can
okay,
hear
sure.
everybody.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Mm.
We're inside the Bay.
Uh,
No, no,
crowded in the Bear.
Tony, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say is two or three things. First of all, Peter, I don't object to this kind of thing. This is mythological, as you've said. What bothers me is my second wife was a poet, and she would make mistakes. I mean, just like spelling or it's just a misuse of a word. And I go, you can't do this. If you're a poet, you have to use the word properly. You know, it's like being out of tune. And I mean, she was very inspired and great and all that. But I just wanted, so it bothers me when I see somebody just make a mistake in poetry. Okay, second thing is, doesn't this remind you of White Fang, where Lennon wraps himself in the body of I think it's a wolf or a
Yeah.
dog to keep warm? That sprang to mind immediately. And
Yeah.
then the third thing I was going to say is numerology goes back to Pythagoras, and the number 10 was sacred from Pythagoras, but the number 7, I'm not sure where that comes from, but not from Babylon, that's for sure, or Egypt. So I don't have any help on that one, but 10 is a sacred number from ancient Greece.
Do you think 7 comes from God created the world in 7 days?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Maybe from the week.
Good call.
Yeah.
That's likely.
Leslie appeared for a moment.
Okay, I'm
She
here. Can
did.
you hear me?
Much
Now,
better.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you?
Yes.
Yes.
I lost my Wi-Fi. They dropped it at the hospital. I got it back. So I have no idea what you've been talking about, but I wanted to say when I was reading that poem, first of all, I was just sort of overcome with this horrible sensation of having your guts ripped out that way. And then I thought that's when he got to the last line and he said, this is what it's like to write a poem. You got to rip your guts out, crawl inside yourself, which was your other, because he was the hunter and the bear
Yeah,
at the same
exactly.
time. Yeah. And then you got to crawl inside yourself. And in a very Jungian sense, you've got to come out of the dark cave and be reborn and then give birth to these poems. So I forgave him for putting me through that grueling imagery.
But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, this is one way to talk about the source of Galway Kinnell's poetry. You know,
yeah,
he would say
there's
also
a ton of mythic stuff in it. I mean, all the stuff about all the coyote stories. Little poops are characters. They are creations of Coyote, and they have personalities, and they talk to him and everything. So, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of stuff in here that reminds me of different stuff that I have read in folklore.
That's really funny. The little poops talking to you. Oh my God, that's so funny. No, absolutely. One thing Galway Kinnell says about Rilke, we talked about Rilke last time. He says Rilke sort of never writes at anything less than maximum intensity, you know. And that's one thing that he loves also about Yeats, although he doesn't think that Yeats is a perfect poet, but he wants his own poetry to be at this kind of maximum intensity. He has this idea of the sort of ancient and sacred role of the poet. You know, that's what he's looking for this. Leslie, probably when you're not talking yet, that's better. Good. Okay. So are we ready to move on to the Book of Nightmares? Any other comments? Oh, I was just going to say too, it's been known to happen with cows too. You know, that somebody would get caught in a blizzard and climb inside a cow and survive that way.
Yeah.
It just totally makes sense. It is real. Yeah, it has been done. Yeah. So let's
in
go
Star Wars too.
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, those giant monsters, furry monsters.
Absolutely. So let's go back to screen share and then we can look at the Book of Monsters, the Book of Nightmares. And we're going to look at the first section first, which is Under the Maud Moon. First, just a comment on the presentation. You can probably see the cover of my book. It's this, he doesn't say in Walking Down the Stairs what the source of this is, but he says that the only known copy is at the University of Iowa in the medical library. So he's got all these alchemical illustrations, all these mystical illustrations, and that's the one for the book cover itself. Under the Maud Moon is an illustration of um, somebody pulling words out of somebody's mouth, or alternately, somebody eating somebody.
Yeah, I think that's Saturn eating one of his children.
Yeah, but
Probably
he uses
is.
it as the baby pulling the words out of the poet's mouth, you know. So again, the sections, and this is really incredibly beautiful poetry. Under the Maud Moon. 1. On the path by this wet side of old fires, black ashes, black stones, where tramps must have squatted down, gnawing on stream water, unhouseling themselves on cursed bread, failing to get warm at a twig fire. I stop, gather wet wood, cut dry shavings, and for her whose face I held in my hands a few hours, whom I gave back only to keep holding the space where she was, I light a small fire in the rain. The black wood reddens, the death watches inside begin running out of time. I can see the dead, crossed limbs, longing again for the universe. I can hear in the wet wood the snap and re-snap of the same embrace being torn. The raindrops trying to put the fire out fall into it and are changed. The oath broken, the oath sworn between earth and water, flesh and spirit, broken to be sworn again over and over in the clouds, and to be broken again over and over on earth. 2. I sit a moment by the fire in the rain, speak a few words into its warmth. Stone, saint, smooth stone, and sing one of the songs I used to croak for my daughter in her nightmares. Somewhere out ahead of me, a black bear sits alone on his hillside, nodding from side to side. He sniffs the blossom smells, the rained earth. Finally, he gets up, eats a few flowers, trudges away, his fur glistening in the rain. The singed grease streams out of the words. The one held note remains. A love note twisting under my tongue like the coyote's bark curving off into a howl. 3. A round-cheeked girl child comes awake in her crib. The green swaddlings tear open. A filament or vestment tears. The blue flower opens. And she who is born, she who sings and cries, she who begins the passage, her hair sprouting out, her gums budding for her first spring on earth, the mist still clinging about her face, puts her hand into her father's mouth to take hold of his song. 4. It is all over, little one, the flipping and overleaping, the watery somersaulting alone in the oneness under the hill, under the old lonely belly button pushing forth again in remembrance, the drifting there furled in the dark, pressing a knee or elbow along a slippery wall, sculpting the world with each thrash, the stream of umphalus blood humming all about you. 5. Her head enters the head hold, which starts sucking her forth. Being itself closes down all over her, gives her into the shuddering grip of departure. The slow, agonized clenches making the last molds of her life in the dark. 6. The black eye opens. The pupil, druised with black hairs, stops. The chakra on top of the brain throbs a long moment in world light, and she skids out on her face into light. This peck of stunned flesh, clotted with celestial cheesiness, glowing with the astral violet of the underlife. And as they cut her tie to the darkness, she dies a moment, turns blue as a coal, the limbs shaking as the memories rush out of them. When they hang her up by the feet, she sucks air, screams her first song, and turns rose, the slow beating featherless arms already clutching at the emptiness. 7. When it was cold on our hillside, and you cried in a crib rocking through the darkness on wood knifed down to the curve of a smile, a sadness stranger than ours, all of it flowing from the other world. I used to come to you and sit by you and sing to you. You did not know, and yet you will remember in the silent zones of the brain, a specter, descendant of the ghostly forefathers, singing to you in the nighttime. Not the songs of light said to wave through the bright hair of angels, but a blacker, rasping flowering on that tongue. For when the maud moon glimmered in those first nights, and the archer lay sucking the icy beastings of the cosmos in his crib of stars, I had crept down to river banks, their long rustle of being and perishing, down to marshes where the earth oozes up in cold streaks, touching the world with the underglimmer of the beginning, and there learned my only song. And in the days when you find yourself orphaned, emptied of all wind singing, of light, the pieces of cursed bread on your tongue, may there come back to you a voice spectral, calling you sister from everything that dies. And then you shall open this book, even if it is the book of nightmares. It's great poetry. It's got such authority to it. He worked on this book for 4 years. He said first he had written a whole other book, and he threw all of it away except the section that is now the hen flower. And he kept working on it and gradually realized that he wanted to write a book in sections, 10 books with 7 sections each, that he wanted to begin it with his daughter's birth and end it with his son's birth. These 2 children names significant to Yeats, Maud, the longtime would-be lover of William Butler Yeats, Maud Gunn, and Fergus, the great figure in Irish mythology and poetry. This book is dedicated to Maud and Fergus, and it has an epigraph taken from Rilke, from the Duino Elegies, quote, "But this, though, death, the whole of death, even before life has begun, to hold it all so gently and be good, this is beyond description." So this is the book. Oh, thanks, Brian. So this is the book. It's a really nice essay about this poem written by somebody who had recently become a father. So this is the book in which Kinnell said he wanted to include everything he knew. He said he gradually came to feel that he could include absolutely anything in this poem, and that it would hold it all. This capacious, bounteous poem. So I mentioned that after Kinnell graduated from college, he spent some years as a wanderer. He had that one Fulbright to Paris, which he loved, but he said he could go for years without working. He lived very frugally, and he worked a series of odd jobs. He became a teacher, became a professor at NYU, but he went for years, first of all, doing odd jobs, traveling around the world. And I think he's referring to that at the beginning of this poem. He says, I stopped, gather wet wood, cut dry shavings. And if you read the whole book, there's one section that seems to be about a would-be love affair. This is the section called The Call Across the Valley of Not Knowing. And I think he's referring to that woman when he says, "For her whose face I held in my hands a few hours, whom I gave back only to keep holding the space where she was." This kind of dedication to this woman that he met just on an airplane going into Iowa City, but never actually had a relationship with her. And then he mentions time and transformation again. The black wood reddens, the death watches inside begin running out of time. He mentions the burning of the wood, the transformation from wood to ash, the oath sworn between earth and water, flesh and spirit, broken to be sworn again over and over. So constant transformation, constant transmigration in a way. And then this love throughout this whole poem, this whole book, this love of language. And you're going to get these times where there's just these amazing words, the icy bee stings of the cosmos. Do you guys know what bee stings are? That's the first milk that is given before the milk really comes in. That's called the bee stings. So here's the cosmos with its icy bee stings, like, whoa. Or just the ritual pleasure of stone, saint, smooth stone, and the croaking of the song. He never refers to himself as having an angelic song. He refers to himself as having a croaking song. And he sings to his babies in this croaking, deep, hoarse voice. Um, and the bear, again, the black bear, his compatriot, his alter ego, his buddy, the black bear nodding from side to side, sniffing the flowers in the rain to earth, and then trudging away, his fur glistening in the rain, like listening to his song. And then all of a sudden, in section 3, here's this baby, this round cheek girl child coming awake in her crib. She who is born. Now, babies will do that. They're fascinated with people's mouths. I know you guys know this, and they'll just stick their hand in your mouth. So he's using this as this metaphor, or this action to seize the poetry from her father, to know the poetry that inhabits in his body, to take hold of his song. And then he starts with this beautiful description of birth, right? Pregnancy, the baby in the womb, the flipping and overleaping, the watery somersaulting alone in the oneness under the hill. The oneness under the hill, that's like the hobbits. Here's this baby in the mother's body, the old lonely belly button pushing forth again in remembrance, this shaping of this baby, sculpting the world with each thrash, the streaming of umphalus blood humming all about you. Section 5, she begins to be born. Her head enters the head hold, which starts sucking her forth. It's interesting to me that the uterus is the strongest muscle in the body, and you better hope it is, because it's got a big job to do, squeezing and pushing this baby out, gives herself into the shuddering grip of departure from the state of oneness, with the body of the mother. And then the mother's, birth passage opening the chakra on top of the baby's head, which is quite mystical, this wonderful thing. The chakra on top of the brain throbbing, a long moment in world light. So as you know, the softest part of a baby's head is on top, is the fontanelle that hasn't closed over. And you can see the pulse through the fontanelle, So he's looking at that and he's seeing this pulse through the crown chakra on the baby. And she skids out onto her face into light, this peck of stunned flesh. And he's got that, whatever it's called, the vernix, the cheesy stuff that's on a newborn baby. And he's got the color, the purple of this baby before she inhales oxygen. And then the scream. And then she turns pink all of a sudden. This beautiful, beautiful description, and so physical. It's like there's nothing decorous about birth. There's nothing well behaved about birth. And then he sees her, and this is going to feed into the imagery of the hen, the decapitated hen in the hen flower, the slow beating featherless arms already clutching at the emptiness. So poignant, so heartbreaking, so powerful. And then the description of the father living in Vermont. They lived in Vermont, and it would be cold. They lived way in what's called the Northern Kingdom in Vermont. When it was cold on our hillside and you cried, I come to you and sing, sit by you and sing to you. You didn't know, and yet he's laying down this memory in the silent zones of her brain. She's not conscious now. She's not conscious of it as a newborn baby, but she's going to remember. He says, singing to you in the nighttime, not the songs of light said to wave through the bright hair of angels, but a blacker rasping flowering on that tongue. Why is his song the blacker, rasping, flowering? Because when the maud moon glimmered in those first nights, and the archer lay sucking the icy bee stings of the cosmos, magical line, in his crib of stars. That's a weird way to talk about Orion, you know, right?
Uh,
As a what?
Orion is not the archer, that's
He's not. Oh,
Sagittarius.
Right.
Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Well, it's a weird way to talk about Sagittarius. It's like the first time anybody ever talked about Sagittarius sucking the icy bee stings of the cosmos in his crib of stars. I had crept down to riverbanks. There's this kind of darkness of the soul, the long rustle of being and perishing, down to marshes, this in between earth and water, this dark place where the earth oozes up in cold streams, and there learned my only song. And then this like just heartbreakingly beautiful gift to the daughter, which is a very unusual gift to a newborn in the days when you find yourself orphaned, emptied of all wind singing, of light, the pieces of cursed bread on your tongue. May there come back to you a voice, spectral, calling you sister, from everything that dies, not everything that is, everything that dies. And then you shall open this book, even if it is the book of nightmares. I get goosebumps at that poetry. I just do. It's such a ritual of love and helplessness. And again, poetry, this poetry by which I lived, you know. So let's just stop here for a moment and see if people would like to talk at all about this first section of the book. Yeah, Brian.
I found the end very moving, but I wanted to point out that I've posted a piece written by a woman named uh, Anita Felicelli, and it's called "The Last Poem I Loved: Under the Maud Moon" by
Yeah.
Galway Kinnell, and she relates this poem to her own birth experience, as well as the lover she found and eventually married,
Mhm.
all under the influence of this poem.
Oh,
It,
that's amazing.
it's very striking, and as a woman in law school, she went to this writers' conference because she had discovered that once she got out of law school, she'd have to be a lawyer. But the piece, I advise you to read it. It was to me quite moving and made use of the language in the poem about birth, and so that's what I have to say.
Yeah, that's lovely. There's another really good essay too by Dante Stefano, who's a poet, and he writes, I was reading it online too, and he writes about how he read this poem first as a student, an undergrad, and he liked it, but it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then he, years later became a father and he read it again, and he's like talking about how rich it is and how real it is and how much he loves it, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty magical. Other comments? Yeah, Deborah.
I have a comment and a question. First of all, this is just an amazing poem because he obviously had a plan, but when it starts out, he's just hiking around and lighting a fire that isn't going so well because it's wet. And then he goes into the whole thing of his daughter. It's just beautiful. But it wanders a lot and it is really fun to be taken on that path. But I wanted to mention something I noticed um, when he's talking about the chakras. I don't know if it's pronounced chakra or chakra, frankly, but anyway, there's seven of them,
Mhm.
and they go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and violet is the crown chakra, which is the fontanelle and the brain and the spirit and the connection to God and mystical and all that. And the first chakra is red, which is primal. It's even before sexuality. It's like the urge to be. And his daughter goes from violet to red, and he mentions those chakras. So it's kind of a cool movement if you're a hippy dippy yoga teacher like
That
me.
is pretty cool. Yeah, that
I
is
like that.
ridiculous.
I like that whole section. But my question also not about the poem so much, so you can take it for what it's worth, but did either of his children become poets?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I'll try to find out what they are. The other thing I want to say is yes, this does wander. But I really, really hope you guys will get this book and read the whole thing. Or you can read it online. The whole thing is online and it's really worth reading, but I just didn't want to saddle you with all 10 sections. But it's like the same characters keep reappearing. The bear, the babies. There's political commentary in some of them. There's eroticism in some of them. The whole thing is pretty erotic, but there's definite sexuality in some of them. But it's like the whole thing just keeps, and the chicken, the hen, it keeps turning, sort of like this magical ball, and the same characters will float to the surface. So it gets richer and richer the more you read it, you know, just
Hmm.
accrues these different meanings. So we've met so far Maud. So let's move on
Oh,
to,
wait, I had one other question about
go
it.
ahead.
At the end, why do you think the voice calls sister? Because I thought the voice was going to call daughter.
Because everything in the universe is created like her. She's not the child of everything in the universe. She's the
Oh, I see what the.
member of everything in the universe, it seems to me. She's his daughter, but at the same time, she's the sister of all other humans, all other bears, all other trees, the co-mortal of everything that is. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
With the recurrent images, what you also get a lot of is the shoes,
Yeah.
beginning with the
The
shoes
shoes
of
of wandering.
wandering, a haunted room, and a dead body.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So let's move on to the henflower. And I really have to apologize that I kept adding more, Tony. This is drive you crazy. The henflower
Well,
is what I
I have
added
to
most recently.
apologize because I screwed that up completely. You have to, because they're two different documents.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know.
you're gonna have to give me a second because I
Yeah.
screwed that up completely and didn't have the proper screen share on the whole
No,
time.
it's not your fault, it's my fault. But there's one that I added just called the henflower.
Okay, let me get it up before you start.
Yeah,
That's all
sure.
I
Sure.
that's all I ask.
I told you that.
Yeah, it's Peter's fault because he told me to add it. I
We'll
was
blame
like,
it on Peter then.
I will,
Uh,
I will.
what is this called? The hen? Oh, it's a
The
new one. The hen.
henflower.
Uh, uh, just give me a second. I
Book of
had
Notes
all these
is
booted up
available
here,
on
but
Fisher-Wirth.
then uh, I had all these booted up here, but then for some reason I had a hard time identifying it
It's totally
when
not your fault. It's really my fault. I was very disorganized.
is this in Canal 2 or not?
No, it's in a whole different thing.
Okay. All
It's
right.
just called the henflower.
Okay, let's see if I can do it this time. Uh,
I mean, it's the kind of poetry that you can get a lot out of just listening to it. Like if you were at a poetry reading, and remind me next time to tell you my most wonderful, there we go, my most magical Galway Kinnell story. Okay, the henflower. One, sprawled on our faces in the spring nights, teeth biting down on hen feathers, bits of the hen still stuck in the crevices. If only we could let go like her, throw ourselves on the mercy of darkness like the hen, tuck our head under a wing, hold ourselves still a few moments as she falls out into a little trance in the witchgrass, or turn over and be stroked with a finger down the throat feathers, down the throat knuckles, down over the hum of the wishbone, tuning its high D in thin blood, down over the breastbone risen up out of breast flesh, until the fatted thing woozes off, head thrown back on the chopping block, longing only to die. Two, when the axe-scented breeze flourishes about her, her cheeks crush in, her comb grays, the gizzard that turns the thousand acidic millstones of her fate convulses. Ready or not, the next egg,
Hmm.
bobbling its globe of golden earth, skids forth, ridding her even of the life to come. 3. Almost high on subsided gravity, I remain afoot, a hen flower dangling from a hand. Wing, of my bones and veins, of my flesh, hairs lifting all over me in the first ghostly breeze after death. Wing made only to fly, unable to ride out the sorrows of being unable to hold another in one's arms, and unable to fly, and waiting therefore for the sweet eventual blaze in the genes that one day, according to gospel, shall carry it back into pink skies where geese cross at twilight, honking in tongues. 4. I have glimpsed by corpse light in the open cadaver of hen the mass of tiny unborn eggs, each getting tinier and yellower as it reaches back toward the icy pulp of what is. I have felt the zero freeze itself around the finger dipped slowly in. 5. When the northern lights were opening across the black sky and vanishing, lighting themselves up so completely they were vanishing, I put to my eye the lucent section of the spheal bone of a ram. I thought suddenly I could read the cosmos spelling itself, the huge broken letters shuddering across the black sky and vanishing. And in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, it came to me, the mockingbird would sing all her nights the cry of the rifle. The tree would hold the bones of the sniper who chose not to come down. The rose would bloom, no one would see it. The chameleon longing to be changed would remain the color of blood. And I went up to the hen house and took up the hen killed by weasels and lugged the sucked carcass into first light. And when I hoisted her up among the young pines, a last rubbery egg slipping out as I flung her high, didn't it happen the dead wings creaked open as she soared across the arms of the bear? 6. Sprawled face down, waiting for the rooster to groan out, "It is the empty morning," as he groaned out thrice for the disciple of stone, he who crushed with his heel the brain out of the snake. I remember long ago I sewed my own first milk tooth under hen feathers. I planted under hen feathers the hook of the wishbone, which had broken itself so lovingly toward me. For the future, it has come to this. 7. Listen, Kinnell, dumped alive and dying into the old sway bed, a layer of crushed feathers, all that there is between you and the long shaft of darkness shaped as you. Let go. Even this haunted room, all its materials photographed with tragedy, even the tiny crucifix drifting face down at the center of the earth, even these feathers freed from their wings forever are afraid. So let's come away from screen sharing. You want to talk about this one a little because you're the one who had stuff to say about it.
Well, this is pretty simple, but my main argument, Anne told me this was the first poem written of the 10, but also it's the poem that is most immediately about fear, and fear is the central aspect of the nightmare, I think. And I think that last seventh section is really one of the great moments in the book, and it's an outstanding book. Addressing himself by his last name suddenly, both takes us into the poem and takes us out of it. Listen, Kinnell, dumped alive and dying into the old sway bed, a layer of crushed feathers, all that there is between you and the long shaft of darkness shaped as you. Let go. Even this haunted room, all its materials photographed with tragedy, even the tiny crucifix drifting face down at the center of the earth, even these feathers freed from their wings forever are afraid. It's very surprising when he gets to are afraid, but it makes perfect sense. And it's mysterious too. I have no idea where that tiny crucifix drifting face down at the center of the earth comes from. Yeah, but
I can tell you, people asked him about that, and he said, if you imagine that you're lying on your stomach with your arms out like this, and then you can imagine yourself sort of crucifix shaped, descending down this shaft of darkness forever.
well, that's a myth that I think works even if you don't understand what he means by it.
Hmm.
Um, and the thing about the hen that fascinates him is that if you stroke a hen the right way long enough, she won't be afraid. And if you're quick at cutting off her head, not that I've ever done this, you can do it very rapidly. And this is something he wishes, this kind of acceptance he wishes he had of the
Yeah,
fact of his own death. But somewhere the hen must be afraid because even these feathers freed from their wings forever are afraid.
yeah.
It's like to be alive is to be afraid.
Hmm.
And that's something that I think it takes courage to recognize.
Yeah, back to the epigraph. This, though, death, the whole of death, even before life has begun, to hold it also gently and be good. This is beyond description. The other thing that I think is really amazing about the hen is the going back toward infinity with the eggs that are in her body. Like here's an egg and then a smaller egg, and then he describes that until these tiny, tiny little things. And so it's like death and life are completely again bound up together. This process of dying releases the final egg, but within her body, he says there's this whole kind of like a regression toward infinity back to zero. And all the eggs, of course, are zero shaped, but they also contain life or potential within them. So, other comments about this one?
I would just say that, whether he's writing about lovemaking or whether he's writing about birth or whether he's writing about death, there's an amazing sense of intimacy and deep connection to everything. I mean, his poetry is just it's very impactful, all of it. But for him to show such, one of the other poems was about lovemaking, and it was so tender and
Yeah,
so erotic and so beautiful, and yet he looks at the same way at a newborn baby or a hen dying. I mean, he's very profound, really,
yeah,
really powerful.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys my Galway Kinnell story now. And then when you read Little Sleep's Head Sprouting Here in the Moonlight, remember this story. Okay. I can't resist. I just can't resist. So, before being in Mississippi, I taught at the University of Virginia, and that's where I met Peter. And we got married and we had Caleb. And Galway Kinnell, who was like one of my few favorite living poets in the whole world, was coming to give a reading. Now, Virginia was not a place that was comfortable to be a woman, which is a massive understatement. I was one of three untenured women in the English department. There was one tenured woman and one that was sort of farther along, but they hired three women the year that they hired me because the feds told them they were going to lose their funding unless they got some women in the university. So I was also the only person with three children and then another one, a baby. My God, a baby.
Not to
And
mention a divorce and
yeah, not
remarriage.
to mention the divorce and remarriage, but that's beside the point. So I had this little 1 month old baby, and we lived on a farm way south of town. And I was damned if I was going to miss Galway Kinnell's reading. So I took Caleb in his little white bunny suit, and Peter and I went into the reading. And it was in this auditorium that was full of, you guessed it, white males. And there am I with my baby. And he was asleep. And then he woke up and he said, "Wah, wah, wah." And I got up instantly and eased my way out. And I took him out into the hall and fed him. And he went back to sleep. And then I couldn't resist it. I just couldn't miss the whole reading. So I sneaked back in and I stood by the door. Kinnell had this gorgeous voice, and he looks way across the auditorium and he goes, "Come in, come in. A baby's cry is poetry's tuning fork.
Oh,
Let me read the baby a poem."
oh,
When you read Little Sleep's Head, that's the poem that he read for our
oh,
little 1-month-old baby.
oh.
That is a famous story by now because I've told it to everybody that I've ever talked to about this book, you know. Okay, so I think if people want to chat a little bit, I don't want to read another section right now. The next one is "The dead shall be raised incorruptible." And then after that, "Little Sleep's Head." And then after that, "Lastness." So that's what we'll do next time I see you, which will be a week from now.
So that was a wonderful story, Anne.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of when I was in Boston and at Harvard, which was also not the necessarily friendliest place for women in faculty in the medical school.
Mm-hmm.
That Boston University had gotten all the way up to having 3 tenured women, I think, or 4, in the English department. And their president, John Silver, who was at the time running for governor, was outraged because, as he said, it had turned into, I quote, "a goddamn matriarchy." 4 tenured women out of 20 something
Oh,
Yeah,
tenured
no,
faculty.
that's
yeah.
crazy.
No. My wife, she was only got hired in as a professor of psychology is for that same reason. Went into almost all white Cal State Fullerton and
Yeah,
all woman, and it's like she was the vanguard, and it was just, it's
yeah,
yeah. Well, thank God for that.
yeah. Yeah, the year that I came up for tenure, literally no women in the university got tenure.
Yeah. Anyway, I got to split. I got to go to a thing on artificial intelligence. So I will see you in a
Bye.
week. Bye.
Have a good week.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great.
So one of my colleagues in Texas was the first woman to get tenure in math and almost the first in the sciences. She might have been second, and I was the third. And several of her colleagues went to the president when I think, well, maybe not when she was tenured, maybe when she came up for full professor, and told the president of the university that it was not appropriate to have a woman as, I think, as a full professor at that point.
God almighty.
And so, of course, that actually because it was, unfortunately for them, said in front of witnesses.
Huh. Yeah.
One of the staff, who was female, apparently heard this. And so apparently that guaranteed that she would become promoted successfully
Yeah.
because there were witnesses and they were already in trouble.
Massive lawsuit. Yeah.
Woke is just ruining the country.
What can I say? Back in the bottle we go. know. Yeah, it's amazing to think that, within our last few decades, things have changed as much as they have with regard to the visibility of women in various professions and so on. I was at Virginia too. There was a theory group, and then there was a breakaway theory group, and the theory group that was mostly men said that Willa Cather was not worth discussing. Well, excuse me, whatever. Well, guys, any other comments? I'm glad that you're enjoying Galway Kinnell. And I hope that you guys all have a really, really nice week. And
That was
Peter?
Just saying goodbye.
Oh, okay. Laura? Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.